Welcome to the Human Everywhere podcast. I am one of your hosts, Jason Bott. Human Everywhere is a production of Deep Space Predictive Research Group. Human Everywhere focuses on what it means to be human in space. In this moment, our society, our world, our species is transitioning to being a space abiding one. And as we do that, it is critical that we come back to the singular question: what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be human here? And what does it mean to be human in space? Joining me today are my co-hosts, Ubi and Aliris, and I'll kick it over to them to introduce themselves and our guests for today.
Well, hello. Hi, everybody.
Oh,
Hi, Aliris.
hey, V, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. So I'll introduce myself and I'm gonna let you introduce our guest.
Okay.
So my name is Aliris Salman. I'm the founder of Deep Space Predictive and so excited about our conversation today. And hopefully what we've started pre-podcast will come out in the podcast and you all will really enjoy our conversation. So Yubi?
Let's do it. Good thing this is just an audio podcast, because right now my light fell, so now I look like I'm telling a Halloween story. I'm Yubi Simin Yeti. My real name is Ubaldo. I am part of the DSP team and very excited to be here. I met Terry a year ago, almost exactly, in Paris at IAC, the big space conference. That was my first foray into space conferences of that magnitude, and it was just great. Like it's just all the people who are there. Jason was there. Massive, right? Like it's crazy, right? You get all the space agencies are there. Anyway, Terry, it was so great to meet you then, and we had a long conversation about the work that you're doing, and the work that we're all doing in this industry, right? And to get us into space. And so, first of all, welcome. Good to see you. How are you?
Thank you. I'm very good. Thanks. San Francisco, another beautiful foggy day.
Oh, there you go.
Sun came out for an hour and change.
Well, isn't that nice? Well, so
Yeah.
Terry, tell us first of all, because we want to get right into what we were talking about before we hit record, but tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing in this amazing industry.
Yeah, it is an amazing industry, and I've met so many amazing people like yourself, and the list is quite long. I'm new to the industry. I think you know this, but I spent the better part of my life as a real estate developer, investor. When it got really difficult, I did sales, I did leasing, you name it. Growing family here in San Francisco, so we had to kind of keep things moving. And all along the way, never stopped wanting to be a part of this industry, and that's literally as long as I can remember, as far as I can. I actually witnessed the first steps on the moon. I was almost 5 years old. And I can tell you that probably the most memorable part of that was Walter Cronkite crying. So first child came in, and I ended up taking a big part of that load. I have a rock star partner who manages to keep things afloat, as they say. And I went back to school, and I started back in particle physics, and didn't perfect that, but I'm definitely fairly well understood part of what I do, and changed my life completely. Understanding particle physics changed how I see everything. And then I really just got deep into cosmology and, all the books. I started taking classes, got my master's in aerospace science, and now I'm in my PhD program at University of North Dakota, and also aerospace science, space studies, both of those. And here we are. And you and we met. First of all, I think we met on the streets of Paris.
We did.
So,
you're right.
which was spectacular.
Yes.
What a great place to be. And IAC was, as you said, it was unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, thank you and welcome. And yeah, it really is. And this industry is. And, as you were kind of telling us your story, it reminds me of like just how human we all are. Like, it's funny to say that, but you don't ever think about it. But here, you told a very human story, and we all have that same story. And so that just makes, I think, what we're all doing even that much more incredible to me, because we've all taken, I mean, you're like, I'm going to go back to school. Let's see, particle physics. Like, who says that? But
Well,
you
I
did. That's like a
went all the way to the beginning is what I
That's
did.
right. That's right.
Yeah,
Well, and Alira's like you too. Like what, you
that's right.
taking this step that you're taking right now at ASU. Like what's the draw for you, Aliris?
It's an opportunity to put your, dreams in action and recognizing one that you need training for it, but the opportunity of getting trained in this new way of thinking, because my background, as you all know, is psychology, undergrad and master's, and now my PhD, I'm like, I'm ready to be that scientist and, do all the experiments and things like that. And the program I'm in is like, hold up, there's a human part of science too, not just the science itself. And it just really aligned with what I was thinking about with deep space predictive and human everywhere. It's like there's humanity even in the thought and development of science and how we do it. You can't get away from it. It's not, like, particle physics. You're doing it, there's measurement, there's standards, there's design and testing, and it's very objective, but there's even in that, there's a human lens that is looking at it, that is trying to understand it and interpret it. And, talking about our other, Jason is also, getting his PhD and understanding another part of human experience. So Jason, tell us about, your journey here as well.
Yeah.
Mine is in a very different way. I think one for the goals and stuff, but I just came to just a point where I'm just like, I want to really dive deep into what happens when we look up at the stars. My degree is in mythology, but my dissertation is on space travel and interstellar travel. And I actually spent last weekend in New York at the Joseph Campbell archive, digging through all of his lecture notes and stuff, trying to validate one of my, strong beliefs is that when the moonwalk happened that you just mentioned, that it made a major alteration in the way we're thinking. Here's Joseph Campbell, student of Jung, who probably is the foremost champion of mythology, influencing George Lucas, Richard Adams, all these others. And the second the moonwalk happened, he says, this is a change. And it appears over and over in his lecture notes, maybe not his books, but he couldn't stop talking about it because he said this monumentally changes the way that we look at ourselves and we look at the stars. And so I think it's that thing that kind of grabbed me, as I really, wanted to understand what it means to be human. And I think the stars themselves, that experience looking up is part of what it means essentially to be human. I don't think we can separate the nature of humanity from that. And, mine was just out of curiosity. I'm not sure if I'm going to advance my career or not, but I was driven just out of pure curiosity to dig into this further.
Very, very interesting. Can I ask a question? Sorry, I'm just
please.
Jason, this is a very interesting thing that you brought to light. I'm fascinated with how we perceived stars prior to maybe the mid 1800s. Up until that point, right? Once the scientists took over, then that perception began to change.
Yeah.
Mythology has always been around. So I was up in the Arctic. We were up there for almost 2 months. For the month that we were there on Devon Island, I never saw a night sky. I never saw a star. I never saw the moon because it was below the horizon. And it was, I felt more alone.
Yeah.
This is very interesting. I felt more alone while I was there. Certainly this is an island that's 5 times the size of the big island, Hawaii. And it was empty. There wasn't a human-centered project anywhere other than HMP, NASA Ames is around the corner, and us. And I was like, oh my God, it's just us. And there's no human-centered design anywhere, which is also mind-blowing. But I never felt, I've always felt more connected. So I don't know, Ubi, I know you may remember this, but I run one major telescope for a major university. I manage it. And then I do that now for another major university. I run 3 really big telescopes. And I don't do it for money. I do it for fun and for full fascination and the cosmology side of things and seeing the stars and what, it's literally where we came from. So do you think that the early mythologists thought of the stars as the birthplace of humanity?
Absolutely. And actually, that's really oddly apropos. I'm in chapter 3 right now, my dissertation. And my dissertation is focused on what's mythology is going to be in the future, what's going to happen when we go out of space. But to do that, we've got to look back. So I'm here in Nebraska. I'm on Lakota land. One of the most interesting things is that we have very recent Lakota stellar knowledge. Their mythology has been really kept alive, probably more than a lot of other indigenous cultures. And the Lakota themselves absolutely believe that the Milky Way is the birth of humanity. They said that we come from star people and that in the end we'll go to star people. For them, their heaven was the Milky Way. They actually believed that is the path that the souls travel. In some mythologies, in some versions of the Lakota mythology, they have a hero that they call the Star Boy, or they call Fallen Star, that he waits on the very edge of the dark patch there in the Milky Way to literally guide the souls further on. And it's all over. It's actually there's a great show out right now called Reservation Dogs. If you guys, great talk about TV makes it.
On FX.
Season 3, yes, season 3, episode 3 or 4, actually.
Reservation Dogs.
Reservation Dogs.
Because I thought I heard Reservoir Dogs. I was like,
oh no, not Reservoir.
Go on there.
It's all about these kids. It's about these kids that are growing up on an Oklahoma reservation, but the third episode of season 3 is all about their mythology of the star people, because it wasn't just Lakota, it was a lot of them where they believed, yes, that's where we come from. As above, so below. That was one of the dichotomies, that those are not just us, but the word is those are our relatives.
I think this kind of, I don't know, Alaris, it kind of feels like I keep gravitating back to you, because I think, first of all, the research that you're doing is going to change the way that we populate space. Space is not going to need all 6'2" male scientists and 5'4" female scientists. It needs everybody. And so when I say everybody, I mean everybody. Sometimes the mad people will show up too.
They may get there. That's the other thing. There's always the onset.
They will get there.
Change. Yeah, there's that change that happens both from the awe, like Jason is talking about, and Terry, with things that you've been hinting at, is like this change has happened to us, and we engage in just being there with no other human life. What is that like? That changes you in ways that we may not be expecting, and we have to be prepared for the unexpected in an unexpected way.
Oh my God, I love that. I'm gonna keep that trademark.
Well, so talk about, so when you mentioned not seeing the night sky, not seeing the moon, right? Not seeing these celestial bodies that do ground every 8 billion plus human being on this planet, right? Like that is the one thing we all have in common. So when you have that taken away, that's super fascinating. Like, does
an immediate disconnect.
Humanity?
Yeah, it was an immediate Ubi. The minute we landed in Yellowknife and the sun never went down, I felt different. And it wasn't just because the sun was up the entire bleeding time. It was because I didn't, first of all, I didn't know how quiet a place could be on the planet. And of course, sitting somewhere where it's that quiet, where you hear no planes, you don't hear sirens, and you could hear your heartbeat in your ears. You could hear your chest breathing, and I've never experienced that. Well, I have in a recording studio, but you're in a recording studio, you're packed like this, and there's musicians and they're singing, and then it gets really loud and it gets really quiet. This was dead quiet for as long as I wanted. And I could see, as far as I could see 20 kilometers the other side of this crater. So the station is on, the research station is on the edge of a crater. And so the other side of this crater, you're like, oh my God. And how quiet can it be? Not a bird. That was the other thing. We saw 2 birds. But this connectivity thing, I keep going back to it because we were taking these studies. We were involved in 2 studies, 2 IRB approved. One of them was facial recognition. Scott Van Noy out of, he and I graduated together from American Military University, and now he is in his PhD program somewhere else, still active duty Air Force. He came up with this great idea. First of all, he came up with the idea to do the analog missions, and we started, this was 3 years ago, 2020. So we built an analog group out of nothing. And there's probably 123 members now, of which we've done major missions all over the planet. Mine was the furthest and the most extreme of all that I've ever seen and ever written about or ever seen. This place was extreme. Now, McMurdo Station, definitely extreme, but you're with 30 or 40 other people. Here it was Caleb, Andy, Olivia, Andrew, and me. And nothing else. 2 birds. So that connectivity was immediate. The loss of, because the sun never went down. So then I started losing. I almost felt. I'm not kidding. I almost felt not as smart because I've always had this connectivity to the stars. I run these major telescopes. I look at, even last night, or not last night, the night before, I was up until 2 a.m. observing. You don't see it here, but I was retained to test a special telescope that's coming out in January from a major telescope company. And so it just gets me reconnected. And I was gone. I didn't have it. I usually do that all the time. And so I felt that very quickly. Honestly, it was within hours. Because I landed at midnight and it was bright as the middle of the day, which was very strange. Anyway.
Terry, that's so interesting because that's one of the theories that's going around in my head is the loss of connection that made you who you are. And if the stars are, if we're talking, cosmologically, the stars are making us who we are, but you have chosen stars as a way to connect. Other people who are nature enthusiasts, that's where they go on a hike when they're having a bad day or when they just want to get away from work. Nature is their connection, or even going for a drive or a fly. And when that's taken away from you and that's your coping mechanism, you are now, what do you use to alter or to have a new coping mechanism? Because I always think, you're on your way to Mars, you don't see Earth again. That's not a connection point. You used to go on hikes. You can't do that anymore. And, we're trying to do it virtually, but still the stark reality of it hits just a little bit differently. And that's what I'm hearing from you as well.
Yeah, you're right. You mentioned it early on, right? This humans in the chain. I always say that. Without humans in the chain, nothing gets done. Robots, awesome. They can pop around, drill holes in rocks, tell us what's in the rock. Drop the sample, and then we'll never go back to go get those samples. Because right now we don't have the confidence in NASA at the moment to pay the money with ESA and JAXA and SNES and all the others. Now ISRO, what's going on? Why don't we just do that now instead of spending? Ubi, we talked about this. Instead of spending all the money we spend on war, let's spend it on saving humanity. Let's figure out how to clean the oceans. So I'm really into ocean stuff too. And so part of my work lately has been using hyperspectral imaging to chase not very well or not healthy plankton. And so I'm doing that because the plankton have been consuming nanoplastics sub 100 nanometer. So anything around 50 or 60 or less nanometer in size. And because it's so small, the phytoplankton are ingesting it. And when they ingest it, not knowing they're ingesting it, then they don't feel very well. They don't perform as well. When they don't feel very well, they clump against each other, and then they start killing each other because they're then anoxic. There's not enough oxygen for them. And so the hyperspectral imaging helps me see them when they're not very well. So there's only 2 hyperspectral imaging cameras available, and nobody's really freeing that up right now. So if you know anybody, actually, Lyris, you might actually have some contacts on there. I think you do actually, but so you lose phytoplankton, those colonies. Now then all of a sudden you lose zooplankton. At that point, if you lose the ocean, you can wipe 1.5 billion people off the planet. And that could happen really quickly, probably much more quickly than we want. So yeah, connectivity to the planet, to who we are. The Inuit, Jason, the Inuit, you mentioned you're on tribal land. We were on the Inuit property, literally, and had to get permission to go and do work in and around their facility or their lands. So they have Inuit lands and they have Canadian lands. And I was very thankful to the Inuit. I mentioned that. I was like, well, without you, we wouldn't be here. So let's be honest. How the heck 40,000 people live above the Arctic Circle? I have no clue, because it is not a hospitable place at all. Anyway, so Larry's absolutely stressed every minute of every day. Noticeable loss of facilities. Definitely not much more irritable, because I'm usually not very irritable. But I did notice that I was like a little more irritable, and then certainly a lot more exhausted, because you're up all the bloody time. And yeah, thank God for Olivia, Andrew, Andy, Caleb. We got very close. Good people, really good. Thank God for them.
And it's so good that you say that's a positive experience, even though I'm sure it was stressful and you went through a lot of things. Not every group comes out thanking everybody.
Yeah, well, I mean, we were lucky. We all got a chance to know each other for months before that, but only once together as a team, which was good. We needed that. But we were very lucky, candidly. The Mars Society and James Burke did a very good job of putting us, the right people in the right room. I want to go back. I offered today. I said, hey, I'll go back on my own nickel. I don't want to go back for the entire mission, but I want to go back and start the facility up, make sure it's up and running, so that the next people who move in don't have all of that. They can move right into simulation. Then you can start taking those stress tests, and you can really get some results. We've got amazing results too, by the way. So we'll report those October 5th. I think we speak about them October 5th at the Mars Society convention. So come if you want to.
I am putting it on my calendar as
in Tempe, Arizona, right? In Tempe.
Yeah, it's in fact, I'm looking for a place to stay. Kidding. I did look at an Airbnb that looks really nice. It's got a pool. I'm like, I'm not going to be here enough to be in a pool. Anyway.
Do it anyway, just because
just because it's Tempe.
So have you been? I think you and I have talked about this. Oh man, maybe last year. Kind of remembering. I don't remember, but I know we've had this chat. I think in Tempe, and I knew you were in the psych side of stuff too, which teams not working together, bad things are going to happen.
Yes.
Nothing else good can happen from that.
And it's just giving people I mean, part of my reason for doing this is to normalize that, yes, we are human and we're not perfect, and it's okay. It's like it's okay to have a bad day, because you can
Mhm.
recover from it. And when you go through it, you're stronger. So when the next bad day comes, you're ready for it. It's like, I know
Yeah.
how to, address this bad day. And that's what people fear. They fear the bad day, and that makes it worse, like stopping a sneeze. You
Yeah.
don't want to stop the sneeze. It's not going to
Yeah.
be pleasant when it's over. But that little process is, when
Well,
Great
second
analogy.
won't come.
that
Yeah.
is so weird to think about because clearly none of us are the same every day, right? We're never at 100% every single day. There's just not possible, but yet we expect it, and like it's sort of driven in, and that's where I get annoyed with, um, job descriptions that are looking for people with grit, right? Because that's sort of what they're implying, is that you got to come and you got to be 100% and you got to give 100% every single day. Well, that's not even possible. So
Yeah.
why are we instilling that? Because that's just going to lead to problems. To your point, Terry, that it's like one bad day will set things off. And if the people aren't equipped with the right tools and resources to manage that and learn from it, to your point, Aliris, somebody's going to open an airlock and then it's all over, right? Like it's just all of those things that could happen will happen. And that's why it just blows my mind that there hasn't been enough of a focus on this.
We take a we take a survey, 162 question survey, beginning of mission, mid mission, end of mission. Then we do the facial recognition survey. We do that every other day, I think that was, and we meditated every day. I think we did a very good job of. So I've done several analog missions. This was hands down the most extreme, high fidelity. I felt like the minute we landed and those little bitty twin otter planes took off, I felt like we're on our own. This is it. We could be on Mars, except we're not wearing a pliss. That was the only difference. And I mean, the place looks like Mars. There's no life anywhere you look. There's nothing. You have to look really hard. Now, there were a bunch of places where it might be a little more damp, and there were these tiny little flowers. I don't know if you guys saw any of those posts that I did on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Tiny little bitty flower. It's called the Arctic poppy. Beautiful, stunning. You're just like, how do you grow here? I'm looking in. Of course, that's the astrobiology side of things, right? So when I started doing cosmology, then I started my thesis. My master's thesis was on an exoplanet that I co-discovered with an undergraduate student. And I did a deep dive in exoplanet science. And then, of course, that made me fascinated with astrobiology. So I don't know, Ubi, when I think through all of the mad days that I have every day, practically, especially with the kids, especially here in San Francisco, it's total madness. I'm still fascinated with what we do in our business, aerospace science, the science of humanity in space. My PhD is human-centered design. One of the projects that they've allowed me to follow. You're going to love this. It's a human-rated habitat, lunar surface. We're going to make it with lunarcrete. We're going to line it with Ubi. We're going to line it with my electromagnetic field. And which I have 2 patents on, or patents pending. And we're going to make our first lunar habitat at University of North Dakota. It's going to be fake, but anyway, how do we fit 5 people in comfortably, right? So that they have their private space, so that they have the galley space where they can all eat together. Windows, you got to have windows, right? You said something earlier about you're peering out the back of the ship, and there goes Earth. It's gone. When we landed, there was no sign of Earth. The only reason I knew we were on Earth is because there were clouds. One study that we did That's Olivia's going to publish likely. We did radiation studies there. And so you're thinking, radiation, no big deal, right? But our control was in SoCal. So Southern California, she had it in her apartment, control. I think she'll be okay with me talking about this. I hope. Anyway, and then we did 3 other locations up and around us, in the habitat upstairs, and the habitat downstairs, and then one hanging outside. We were double-digit millisievert in SoCal, and we were triple-digit millisievert in the Arctic. And so we went from no exposure, magnetically, protected, magnetically field protected, to where all of a sudden everything comes in, all the mass, all of the radiation, everything comes in. Even with an ozone, you're still going to get a good radiation exposure up there. And sure enough, it was 5 orders of magnitude higher radiation. Now, still not unsafe, and still no neutron radiation, thankfully. But that would be weird, wouldn't it? That was the thing. Now, we did have Starlink, I got to say. So we were fully connected. I could have called you, and I did call people when I had to.
Interesting.
And by the way, we had to. So injury on the mission, severe injury. I had to triage the severe injury.
Wow.
And had I not known how to do that, it would have been, draw straws to see who wants to solve this issue, right? And I just jumped right in. I'd been to really difficult, scary, deadly places, and people have died in my purview, practically in my hands. And, it's one of those things where, Olivia, even she said, how did you, how was it you were able to get through the stress of that? And I said, I've seen all of it, right? Seen it, smelled it. There's just horrible stuff. So you kind of, I don't know. I don't think you need those kind of people on the mission, right, to Mars. But you sure need somebody that's going to be cool as a cucumber when the shiitake mushrooms hit the fan.
Well, and that sort of goes to where I'm headed now. And Jason, this is like the philosophy, the mythology, right? The belief, the system that we build in, not only individually inside of our heads, but as a team, of these standards and laws, right? The governing beliefs that we're going to have. Like, how does that then, where does that come into play? And it seems like it's situations like this where everything else seems completely lost. When does that start to come into play?
I would argue that it actually comes into play immediately, that philosophy is being shaped. Either it's shaped consciously or it's shaped unconsciously. We don't have an option. I mean, I think, you'd mentioned mythology. I mean, mythology and systems are, different, but I mean, at the end of the day, mythology is the father of philosophy. We can't help but create that. Humans are going to create those systems. We're going to create these connections. We're going to create these things around us for the purpose of helping us make sense. We're pattern sensing people, we're pattern detection people, and we're going to put those in place, which I think in a way emphasizes, like I said, the work that Alira started with deep space of, we can either, if we assume that we're just going to put up humans up there and they're just going to abide by the mission protocols and not develop their own systems of governance, and then we're foolish. So we either be proactive and engage and guide and direct those system developments as we add people, not just 2 or 3, but when we're talking about crews of 100, 500, and that will happen at some point. We need to be really, I think, proactive about that. I always look back at William Golding's Lord of the Flies. For whatever purpose, you throw kids out on a deserted island and they're going to create their own system, maybe in terribly barbaric. And he had comments about, his opinion about human nature, but it does go to show humans will create those systems, guided or not. And if we're not careful, those systems could actually be antithetical to the very purpose of why we put them up into space.
Wow. does leadership, Larry, does that play any role in the work that you guys are doing?
Well, leadership is definitely a part of the group experience. And it's interesting because my next study is about looking at leadership and how that may change within the same group. You talk about situational leadership. People have different experiences and different talents. You're talking about your experience with the injury. If you took leadership in that moment and people respected you for that, now you will probably take care of everything with that, when it comes to those kind of situations. And it just depends. That's the thing about the group. The group evolves and changes. And it really depends on what the group needs. And that's why you need people who can be okay being the follower, because you're not always going to be the leader in everything that you do. Jason, when you were talking about the different types of society, evolution in society, one thing I know is you get further and further from Earth, the more your decision making has to be on a social and societal level, because you have to create systems that aren't bound to Earth. With the moon, we can see the Earth and we're still bound to it because we can see it, we understand it, we know the context. Mars, you're going to have this team making team level decisions. And as more and more people, become part of the mission, and the further we get from Earth, the more we have to make decisions that create new societal changes, rules, and engagements as we go. So the further we go, the bigger the decision making and the bigger the impact.
Have you written on that? That is a really good topic to
it just,
follow up with.
I was giving a talk and that aha moment about that kind of decision making really started to emerge. It's like, oh, because we talk at 100-Year Starship about, what are we sending? What are we creating? Talking about those big societal questions. You can't talk about that on Earth, near the Earth, because we've already created it. It's intact.
Yeah. It's going to be different the minute you walk out the door and get on the next ship. Can you imagine 100 people traveling? I don't know, Jesse, you mentioned that earlier. I was like, oh, what would that be like? There might be some anarchy.
Yeah, there'll be anarchy, there'll be everything. And and I think Alaris has used this illustration. It's, let's say you send them out interstellar, you have no guarantee that they're going to hold to the original mission. Once they're out there and they're on their own, it becomes their own priorities, and their priorities will be defined by whatever conditions they have put around themselves and whatever stories they've told themselves, and whatever stories they begin to tell about us. I mean, I hate to get political here, but look at just what's happened in the US. It doesn't matter if you can have reality and facts staring you in the face. A story well told, no matter how ludicrous it is, can actually compel people to do things, that are very antithetical to the very nature of who we are. I mean, I'm talking about the, January 6th uprising. I'm talking about, there's been these things where ultimately at the end of the day, it was a story well told. We may not have liked the storyteller, we may not have liked the story, but it became very compelling. And, that will happen in the future in space.
Well,
You're
think
locked
about
on a ship with that. Whoa, Ubi, come on, you and I
one
can handle it.
generationally. I mean, you think, and I'm thinking about, the TV show Silo that just came out on Apple TV.
So good.
Based on wool.
Yeah, excellent. And but to this point exactly, right? You're how many? They're like 2 or 3, 4 generations now past, let's say our present.
Yep.
And it's exactly the stories. All this stuff's sort of been altered in a way that certain people are left in power, and there's new rules and new laws, but nobody knows what to, like, they have to believe it because that's just how they grew up. Like at that point, that history is gone unless somebody has done a good job of preserving it or staying in contact. It's
That's a
gone.
crazy film.
It's
Have you
And then
finished
that
watching it?
Yeah, I just finished. Yeah, season 1. It's crazy. Like and then the
That was a
reality when it just hits you. It's just
But
that was
here's
a
the thing, but the generation that changed is always the fourth generation. That's
Is
the
it?
oh
one you have to worry about because they're so far from that original mission
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
original passion. Jason just said, they start making their own rules, their own stories. If you can make it past the fourth generation on a generational ship, that they still have the purpose in mind and the passion in mind in the same way as your mission, but it's changed. But I always think it's that fourth generation that you gotta,
That's so
that's where your
interesting.
target needs to be. Is
Well,
that
because at that point, it's funny because at that point, then the original mission is sort of myth. Like it's, we come back to this idea of what, how mythology and all that becomes their story. The fourth generation, that's their belief system almost, but not real. And then they can decide whether they believe in it or not.
right?
Like we're doing now. There's so many people now questioning the religion and all that's right. It's that same conversation. Wow, it's really fascinating.
yeah.
I mean, we could keep
This
talking.
is,
Clearly,
I was gonna say this is a deep track.
this is
Oh.
great. Well,
What do you think about analogs? You guys, I mean, how's the response been from other people about analogs in general?
yeah,
Are
we've
they,
gotten
do
some
people
good.
like
So
them?
the last person we talked to was your friend Bailey Burns.
Oh yeah, I love her.
We love
She's
Bailey.
awesome.
And I mean, she had it's funny, everybody's sort of had slightly different perspectives on analog missions, which has been really
I'm supposed to go to Sam. I was supposed to go to Sam and do a mission this fall. I was like, oh, man, I don't know. I need some time.
time to process.
Because when I go in, I go in for the science. I take our IRB approved studies with me.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, I'm really into lately, you'll get a kick out of this. I know you know this, but I've been into algae. Algae, we've had 5, Earth-wide extinction level events. And every one of those we repopulated with the help of some type of an algae or a cyanobacteria of some kind that kind of brought us back to life. So that's when I see those algae mats. I don't know if you saw any of the pictures I posted, but Olivia and I were charging around in our backpacks and our helmets and very high fidelity. And she goes, "What's that over there?" And it was this big, huge algae mat. And I'm like, "Whoa, let's go." I mean, first of all, I wanted to get a piece of it, bring it back. And then I wanted to sample the water. So I brought the water back. It's fine. I'm going to test it because I want to know how the heck it just came out of nowhere. It's growing literally out of nowhere. So everywhere you look, there's nothing except for the tiny little Arctic poppy. There's these other weird little plants. And then you turn a stone over and also you'd find like this little worm, tiny little worm. They're called Arctic snails. And nothing else. Well, now we did see coyote scat or not coyote, excuse me, wolf, Arctic wolf scat. And then we also saw claw marks and looked like teeth mark from a bear, polar bear, but we never saw him or her, thankfully. But I have to say, the isolation thing that you're on, Hilarious, that's kind of, I think once the team, the crew is isolated, and if you're no contact with anyone other than MCC, plus your emails that you're going to have, which will be video emails likely, right?
Mhm.
How is the human going to react? I don't know that they'll do that well. I think we can say we'll do well. I would lie and say I'll be fine, and then it'd be a total head case along the way. But anyway,
Yeah.
just
Yeah, I
kidding.
think that's what's gonna happen is people are gonna try and power through because you've used,
Great.
that's what's made you successful as a person, is that you powered through. And now
Yeah.
I want to make sure I give you additional tools when that doesn't work.
And it will happen. There will be those moments.
Yeah.
Even I had little moments. So I'm be very candid. I don't mind. I'm an open book. Bailey knows that. Most of my friends know that. I'm just desperately honest. And one of the things is that I get aggravated with is when, and it shows too. So when the minute I get aggravated, whatever it is that triggers me, it's just a little trigger sometimes. I have to take a deep breath. I have to literally take a massive deep breath and go, yeah, nice, calm down, no big deal, just and then move on. But it happened twice. And Olivia goes, oh, yeah, I saw that. Like, yeah. And the perception, right, of this is a good one. Perception. What? No offense, women have a better perception of what the heck is they see. And I think they just are a better reader of a book because Olivia saw it right away and nobody else did. Interesting. But anyway, I don't know. We'll see. We'll have to have a professional soothsayer, palm readers, something like that.
Oh, there you go.
That'd be fun.
I don't know. We'll have to kind of put together your dream team. Like who it's almost like Dungeons and Dragons or something, right? Like I'm imagining, right? Like you need a mystic, you need the doctor, medicine, you need a storyteller.
You definitely need a storyteller. 100%. You have to have someone that'll be a funny storyteller. I need funny stories. I can't stand
it. You have to have a storyteller.
Right.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have someone that guides that story, someone else will rise up. I actually think and maybe there is a future episode where we dive into Dungeons and Dragons. So, because you can see how. Oh yeah, well, and you can see how teams. I mean, D&D is a great example of what happens when you can't bring cohesiveness together, and tricks that DMs use. Like my constant trick is if I cannot get a group that's gelling, my first thing I start to do is try and make personal goals. Like, why does this matter to them personally? And give them a personal investment. If I can get them over that, it's amazing. Once they have a personal stake, they start to filter through. But I mean, there's so much we can do there,
So have you guys heard of Loretta Hidalgo Whiteside?
Yeah. Oh yeah. We all are big Loretta fans. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did Space Guy 6, and then I went back again. I did get a top off, and that's how I got to know Bailey and a bunch of other people. In fact, all of her crew, she went into SAM with, and then some of her other crew that she went into, I think it was High Seas. Yeah. Anyway, I've got 60 days inside Analogs, and I had a grown man on his knees weeping. And, there are going to be moments when people will lose the plot. And somehow you have to be able inside to have the heart for that person, to be able to have a proper chat with them, because their value doesn't diminish because they've lost the plot. In fact, they may actually bring, Larry, you said this earlier, they may bring something else to the table that's a little more positive. Maybe because they feel so deeply about something. This is a really interesting talk track. I didn't expect this. I thought we'd be talking about rockets. Kidding.
Surprise.
Kidding. Or Sizzler Industries. How do you weld in space?
Yeah. Nope. No, this is all about us. This is all about the humans.
So Deep Space Predictive is probably going to lead the way in that, from what I can see. I don't know what you guys think.
We're working on it.
Yeah, we hope so. And I think, and I'm so surprised that no one has talked about it in this way, and people are always open when we talk about what Deep Space Predictive is, and it always amazes me is like, why is this so novel? And I think it's the fear, is like the fact that a person, kind of broke down and was on their knees crying, and it's like that it's okay because we know it's going to happen, and we got you. That's what it is. It's like, I got you. It's going to be okay. And that's what I really want to take into every mission. Is like, we got you.
I love that.
The problem is why we haven't gotten there yet is because, and maybe this is just me, but I feel like if somebody were crying in front of me like that, I would freeze up. And I feel like most people would freeze up. They wouldn't know what to do. Like, that's so uncomfortable that's why we haven't touched on it yet. Like, we're going to push that down the line a little bit.
It's, do you, I heard this, Simon Sinek. Have you guys heard any of his work?
Yep.
Brilliant mind. Came from nowhere, literally. But I love the fact that we all, and Loretta teaches this, you have to have a purpose. What's your purpose? It has to be well defined. Mine is not well defined, but because I feel like I'm a multi-purpose person.
Yeah.
Say that 3 times fast. Anyway, so I'm concerned that many of the people that we send up now don't have these type of interpersonal training sessions, right? Or and we had a lot of chats, the 5 of us, for our mission up to the Arctic. A lot. Like, it was a lot. I thought it was too much, but I'm glad we did it because, we got to know each other, even though most of it was here, right? Thankfully, we have this technology now. That definitely changes things. Although you could all be bots. That. But
all right.
Jason's like, yeah, don't forget. That's true. Anyway, do you, my pushback to anybody who doesn't want to participate in something like that is just like, hey, we're going to have to bring the whole thing. This is it.
Yeah.
And when I have baggage that I tell everybody when they want to know, and if they want to know, I will answer the questions. Truthfully, and that probably scares a lot of people, I think, most of the time. Yeah. In fact, today someone asked me, how do you think Earth is going to do? I said, at its current rate and trajectory, I said, it's not going to go well. And he goes, well, what do you think then? And I told him my nanoplastic story. And so I'm worried. And, we need to be ready, and humanity has to be ready. So we have to have these conversations now.
Well, thank you for being a part of this one, because we agree. And we're going to keep doing this and having these, just absolutely enlightening conversations, and hopefully they spur more, right? And spur more ideas and thoughts for people to go out, and maybe this is somebody's moment to go start studying particle physics or something. Hopefully, right? We can inspire people to go out and do that, because that's what we need. Back to the original point, I think Jason and Terry, you both mentioned it, like, it's going to take all of us, every single one of us. So Terry, thank you. It's always great to see you and talk to you. Thank you for being here.
And thank you for your time so much. And I could tell we've taken you to a place you weren't expecting, but I appreciate that you went along the journey with us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for leading us that way.
Absolutely. And thank you, everybody, for continuing to listen into the Human Everywhere podcast. Season 2, we're right in the middle of it. So keep listening. Really appreciate it. Take care, everybody.